Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for this video. When I started looking into bariatric surgery, Maddie was one of the first people that I found on social media. I found her blog and she was just so incredibly helpful. She kept it real and I just was super drawn to her kind heart, the compassion she shared, how she showed who she really was. And she's just been a super impactful person in my bariatric story and journey. When I reached out to her to see if she would do an episode of Dine with me, I was so excited she agreed to it. So enjoy us eating cookies, chatting about our lives, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, I'm Maddie. I'm 34 years old and I am by trade. I'm a registered nurse. I'm also a hairstylist, which is kind of crazy
I
too.
didn't know that.
Yeah, I went to hair school right when I graduated from high school. I thought I would do that forever. And then I fell into like being a nursing assistant and I went gung ho and got my nursing degree. And then I kind of accidentally fell into blogging and discovered that there was a community of people who had also had bariatric surgery. And I started sharing, recipes and a couple before and after photos. And I found, this new kind of bariatric community on Instagram and started sharing my story with people and meeting so many people who were just like me and who looked just like me and had had the same struggles that I had had my whole life.
Mhm.
And so that was about almost 3 years ago. Um, but I love baseball. That is one of my favorite things. I love meeting new people and I love finding common things that we have struggled with our whole life that we are overcoming together. And I was just kind of thinking about, a post for tomorrow or for later this week. And it was kind of this feeling of like, do you ever feel like undeserving of this new life that you have? And you almost feel like sometimes like you're going to wake up from it and it's just going to be like all gone. And sometimes I get a little bit of, I've struggled with that since being post-op like 5 years
Yeah.
ago. Um, like, is it all going to disappear? Am I just overnight going to gain all my weight back? And
Mhm.
I've went through so many times with multiple people and multiple friends and family, what would you have to do to realistically gain all of your weight back? And
Mhm.
because it can be scary for somebody who always did gain all their weight back.
Right. Well, and I think part of what I'm hearing too is just like when your worth has been tied up in that for so long and it's been like a back and forth teetering, that's been something I've had to really sit with, kind of undo now because it's like, okay, what is my worth then? Where does that lie if it's not in my physical body or even if I gain weight, lose weight? It's kind of it's tough. And then I think when I know I've had this imposter syndrome with different things in my work life and social media or whatever. It's like, when are they going to find out that I'm like that this isn't me? And then it's like, wait, but it is me. I'm not like lying about it, but it is. It's like unsettling.
Well, and then I think it kind of gets traded for one thing or another. And then, going from living my whole life in a 338-pound body where not many people wanted much to do with me. And then now living in more of, a normal sized 170, 180-pound body and then creating a space where like-minded people can come where a lot of people are following my journey. You get wrapped up in a whole different type of thing where a lot of times you have to step back and just be like, I'm just a normal person sharing my story. Like there's nothing special about anything that I'm doing that another bariatric patient, they're doing the same thing. I'm just choosing to be public about it.
Right.
So there's nothing about what I'm doing that's making anything special or anything. Like I'm not eating anything special. I'm not
Yeah.
doing anything special. I try and remind people all the time too that like anyone on my page really hasn't seen me lose weight. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, people are very quick to put me like up on a pedestal. And I'm like, you guys haven't even seen me lose weight. If anything, you guys saw me deal with 15 pounds of regain
Mhm.
and go through like a lot of like struggles. You guys have just seen me like fail and
No.
kind of try and like overcome things.
Sure, sure.
Um, but I'm like, I am just in the same struggle bus as everyone else. And I just choose to share it all.
Yeah, but I think that's what drew me and I wanted to share this with you because I started looking into bariatric surgery, like really considering it for myself back in like October, November of last year. And you were one of the first people that popped up. And I like was doing so much research trying because it's like you want to find somebody that you can relate to who's been through it. And something I think why people feel so connected and drawn to you is because you are just like yourself. Like, I think that's the big difference is like, that's what stood out to me and why I think I felt so drawn to is like, here's this woman who's in, you know, a similar age range as me. Like, you know, she got the surgery done. This is her, you know, several years out. And like it was just so fun getting to know you, even though it was one-sided, you know, like I was just getting to know you from my end. It was like, wow, I could really do this. And like I could actually be a lot happier with this choice. And so I think, I don't know, that's how you've always come across to me is like the same person I'm talking to now is the person that I've been watching and getting to know, you know, starting back in October, November time. So of last year.
When was your surgery?
So my surgery was in March of this year.
Okay,
So
March
just
of,
about 6 months. Mhm.
okay. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And are you so happy with that you did it?
Yes, I am. I it was interesting just how much like I think the thing that was holding me back a lot was the pride piece to it. Like, no, I can do this on my own. Like, if I do this, I'm a failure, all this stuff. And then it's like, once I kind of looked more at the reality of why my body was designed this way and how it could really help with it, it was like, yeah, this makes sense for me. Like, I know that's not, you know, it's not the choice for everybody, but I am so grateful and more so grateful just for the opportunity it's given me to dig into emotional and mental stuff that I don't think I would have done in this. It's been like a whirlwind of it. It's almost like a condensed version of just getting to know myself, like because I haven't had a choice is what it's felt like.
Yeah. And I remember when I was considering it, I had just like prayed and prayed and prayed, like for, you know, for God to open up like an avenue. And then when bariatric surgery was introduced to me, I was like, oh no, not that avenue. Like
Yeah,
any other
not that
avenue
one.
that,
Yeah.
like that couldn't be for me.
Uh-huh.
And then, you know, the first year post-op is just like this time where you've relied on food for so long as a means to everything, like as for when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're celebrating, I mean, it's literally your best friend for everything. So it's almost like you're mourning like the death of your best friend. And I remember thinking like 6 weeks in, when I was 6 weeks post-op, I was like so depressed and so irritable. And it was literally because I was just grieving the loss of food.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a coping thing, you know, for many people, and we all have different ways of coping, and that's definitely one I can relate to also. And for me, my journey was a little bit different where I kind of dealt with more of that, like grieving food, not using it as coping, kind of like 2 years before even doing bariatric surgery. So by the time I got bariatric surgery, it was a little different in that way where I was just like, I didn't have that same experience, but like my mother-in-law, who I did my other video with, she definitely had that time of like grieving and where it was really, really hard. So yeah. And it's a tough, I mean, the recovery part, it's like, I feel like I don't have kids yet, but when people say like they have their first baby and then it's like, it's so painful, but then they do it again because they forget about it. I kind of feel like that's how it's been with bariatric surgery. It's like, I think back about that. I literally watched cooking shows for probably the first like few weeks after getting my surgery done, just because I missed cooking even. Like I've always enjoyed that. That was like really sad and hard.
I know I would see commercials and I would remember like my mouth just kind of watering and I would
Yeah.
turn off the TV and I was sad and it was just like, what? And I remember thinking like all of this is because my relationship with food like couldn't be controlled. But then I thought like food is everywhere. Like it is as accessible. It's more accessible than putting gasoline in your car. Like it's just
Yeah.
as accessible as water. Like,
Mhm.
and so when you go through things like in as much, you have to lean on something. And
Yeah.
that's what we chose to lean on. And the
Mhm.
biggest thing was realizing that we decided to make a decision to change.
Right, right. And that's been an interesting piece integrating back in. I feel like I don't know. It's like it's hard because it's like I've followed my program guidelines pretty well, but there's other things where just intuitively I've done things different, and that's been a hard transition too of like kind of coming back into the real world. I don't know if that's just how I'm calling it, but like and I feel like I've just had to work through some of that shame too of like everybody's doing it different. Some people say you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. I'm curious from your perspective, being post-op, do you still have that? Or is that something that was more kind of when you were learning stuff more in the beginning?
As far as like following what my like certain
Or just like what even people do on social media. Like I feel like sometimes people will come in and be like, this is like the best way to do it. The only way to do it is like this. You know what I mean?
Well, it's so funny too, because like when I had surgery, like I was talking to Sam about this. Like there was only like three flavors of protein. And there was
Oh.
only like three flavors of premier protein shakes.
Mhm.
Like we had caramel, vanilla, and chocolate. Like that
Yeah.
was it. Banana cream just came out and like I went everywhere. There
Uh-huh.
was only one unflavored protein and it was Quest and it was chunky. Like they had just came out with protein water and it
Uh-huh.
was like, so there wasn't a lot of other stuff. He's like, you had surgery back in the ice age.
I, and
Um,
it was only 5 years ago, but that's
yeah.
old. Yeah.
And so I didn't have there was Facebook groups and stuff, but I didn't have so much like social media impact.
Mm-hmm.
And my surgeon and dietitian's office, so my surgeon really neglected like a post-op wound infection that I had. So I actually had to go to a different hospital. I had to go to the one that I work at for wound care.
Got it.
So I followed pretty much what they had said, pretty much like to a T, kind of like I gave up coffee, if you can believe it, this coffeeholic for 10 months post op.
Wow.
But
Uh-huh.
then I went back to it. I think I did like no straws for a while, and things of that nature. Now, as far as like protein and like water, I barely ever hit my goals, but I was pretty sick in the beginning. I was off work for 11 weeks because of the wound infection. And I had a stricture that they had to balloon dilate like 3 times. I
Mm,
would still do it again
sure.
tomorrow. Like I would still do it. Um, but my meals were a lot smaller for a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty like malnourished the first like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do like 6 small meals. And like even those I was barely ever like able to finish for like the first like 4 to 5 months. So I really had a hard time meeting like all of my food goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't start exercising till like 6 months post-op just because I was a little bit sicker. I always tell everyone though, I say, do not listen to like anything you hear on social media. Like you have to, for the first time in your life, you actually have to listen to your body. Like,
Yes.
even if your surgeon is telling you, like, I know they say follow your surgeon's guidelines, but if your surgeon's telling you get in 65 grams of protein, but it's before bed and you're at 50 and you're full, like you
Mhm.
can't finish it or
Yeah.
and get sick. Like you can't do that. And like so those are the areas where like I bent the rules. Or
Mm-hmm.
I would try and drink like a little bit of protein water, or I would try and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so yeah, it was the first time that I was like, I actually have to listen to my body. Like I have to trust that my body is going to, for once in my life, do the right thing.
Yeah. And that's scary that I know, like I noticed within the first couple months for me, I was super anxious. Like I don't have a very anxious personality by nature, but yeah, I think it was just that where it was like, wow, I really have to rely on myself. And like when what your body cues are telling you aren't necessarily matching up with your program guidelines or suggestions, I had a real struggle with that, like a real dilemma of like, what do I do? But then I've just found, I am going to listen to my body, and it's worked out really well. Like I'm still making the progress and strides that I need to. But yeah, it's a tough transition.
I feel like too, the first time that you really try and decipher, is this hunger or is this like boredom or whatever? I was like, I don't really know what it feels like to be hungry because I just ate to eat like all the time. And
Mhm.
most of the time I was like, I don't really think that I am truly hungry, but like I really had to be in tune with myself. And I took the first year and just like really, really, really paid close attention to, like, I took that first year to myself. It
Mhm.
was like, that's the first year where you just like can't pay attention to people on social media and what they're doing. And because honestly, you could have the same starting weight and the same height and the same body frame and lose totally different. And you could still look totally different, or you could
Right.
look the same, but you might have different health considerations and you might be a different age and you might be, you might just have different things going on. So,
Right. Yeah. Well, do you want to try the cookies that I named after you?
yes, I
I'm
tried
so
the
excited.
dough. Oh my gosh. And my dad was like, what is in these?
So this cookie recipe, so do you guys have crumble? Well, I'll let you try your
Yes.
cookie first and then I'll explain how I got there, but we won't delay it anymore.
Okay. Okay. I'm obsessed with crumble.
Okay. Well, I'll explain it then first, but I'll try to make it
Okay.
quick because I really want to bite too. But so I love the consistency of their chocolate chip cookies, but the
Mhm.
flavor just is always, it's like a little off. Like I don't love the flavor. So I literally took a year, this was like before bariatric surgery, concocting up a chocolate chip cookie recipe that had crumbles texture or close to it,
Mhm.
but my flavor. So if you want to, we can try. Cheers it up.
Oh, yes, check it out. So I actually saved, cheers to us finally meeting.
Cheers. Yes.
Oh my gosh, they're so good.
Right? Lots of batches of cookies to get to where we're at now.
Do you think it's the dark brown sugar?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because we do Walmart delivery like all the
Mhm.
time, and they substituted it with light brown sugar this last time. And so I had Dylan, my husband, try it. And he's like, the dark brown sugar, it does make a difference. That's like the
Mhm.
biggest difference. And the more flour is more of the texture piece, but the dark brown sugar is where it's at.
They're so good.
Mhm.
So, and it was so funny because my dad's like, "Oh, are these like bariatric friendly?" And I was like, "No, they're
No.
not." I'm like, however, he knows that I'm also like, I get crumble cookie, like
Yeah.
and like a crumble cookie. Me and Cicely and Danielle, like if we're like traveling or if we're having a girls' night or whatever, we order crumble cookie and we always
Uh-huh.
cut it in like 8 or 10 pieces. And it's so
Yeah.
funny because then the next morning we get up and we're like, okay, which one are we having bites of again? And
Yes.
I'm
Which one's for breakfast?
yeah. And we always are like plotting it out. Like we can't wait to go to Portland, me and Cicely, so we can order.
Yes.
We have to travel to treat ourselves to crumble cookie.
Right. Oh, I love it. I know we do it all the time. Like, especially when COVID was, at the peak, we would send it to like deliver to coworkers' houses and stuff like for birthdays and stuff like that. Yeah, crumble's good.
Well, and I think the biggest thing too is I remember thinking like, and I even told my best friend Heidi this, like, and she's very like tiny, like but when I was deciding to have the surgery and I was on my all liquid diet, she was like so worried that I was on all liquids that she basically did liquids too.
Oh.
And we talk about it now, and she's like, I have more fun with you now eating than I did even then. She's like,
Yeah.
because we go and we like plan out like a fun place, and
Mhm.
sometimes we'll just go and get like something and share it, or we'll get crumble cookie and take the rest of the kids. Like, she's like, you still live like a super normal life.
Yeah. And that's something that's always been really important to me because part of my story, the reason, one of the main reasons why I got the surgery is Dylan and I have been trying to get pregnant for the last 4 years, and I have PCOS. It just like wasn't happening. And so seeing more of the research on that is what prompted it. And so knowing that I can get to the point of being able to sustain a pregnancy, sustain breastfeeding and all of that, it's going to require food, And so I think, I just never wanted that to be something that I was afraid of because it's going to be what's needed.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
cookie it up, even if they're not bariatric. I do have a good recipe that is more bariatric friendly. I think it's gluten-free and it uses coconut sugar as like a brown sugar
Ooh,
substitute. So that one's good. I'll
okay.
have to dig that one up somewhere. But
No, but these ones are bariatric friendly if you can. Now I know some people have like where they're like, oh, I'm very triggered by that. Like I don't eat
sure.
the one thing I don't eat since surgery is deep fried food,
Yeah.
like appetizer, like French fries or things that go in a deep fryer.
Yeah.
Just because I used to binge for like
Sure.
days on those.
Well, and those it doesn't really make me feel good. I've tried that a couple times and like the deep fried stuff just doesn't sit too well anyway.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's like something that's off the table for me.
Yeah.
But so I understand if people are like, oh, I just can't have that one food,
Right.
it'll send me in a spiral or whatever. But these are so good.
Oh, I'm so glad you
Oh my
like
gosh, I'm dropping them out of my mouth.
it.
Oh yeah, my dad ate 3 of them.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, so I
Mhm.
need to know, I love how much you have your dad and Winifred, and that's another topic. We'll get to her in just a minute because I adore her. But with your dad, I need to know what his flavor profiles are. Like, what are his favorite things? And that's going to be the next cookie I create. Or depending on what it is, I might do a different something.
So he loves spicy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
His favorite is spicy,
Mm-hmm.
but my dad usually always says, my dad has the funniest like Chadisms. He literally says, I would eat stuff that would make a billy goat puke.
So he likes it all.
Yes.
He'll eat anything and everything.
He's picky about, no, he's picky about nothing. But he can be like, if he says that he doesn't like something, like it's bad. Like,
It's real bad. It's got to be real bad.
mhm.
Okay, that's good. I have enough to work with that. Spicy
But he
and
loves
anything.
spicy.
Okay.
He loves condiments. Like they're his favorite.
I love it. Okay.
But yes,
I'm gonna have to think on this one a while, but I'm gonna do something wild for Chad. Chad deserves a wild cookie, and I'm gonna deliver.
he's pretty out of control and he just loves the camera. He, yeah.
Well, and Winifred, I love the story. I think one of my favorite things when I see it come on your story is when you talk to her about being in the incubator and when she was a little baby.
On that first night that you were born, they didn't know if you were going to make it through the night. They said we had to be on watch. They said that the first 4 hours were critical because you were so tiny. And they said you might not make it. And that it was hour by hour.
And so if you want to humor me, I thought it would be funny to create stories for each other because I know we're just meeting for the first time, but I thought you're so good at it. You could talk about the first time you met me, but like in Winifred fashion. Does that make sense?
Yes. So let me think. Okay.
No, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but you always do such a good job with Winifred. So
I know I'm pretty good at being put on the spot. I know. So literally they came in from a walk today, my dad, and So on days that he's off work, he takes her twice a day.
Uh-huh.
So she went to the baseball field this morning and ran around. Her little feet were all covered. And tonight they went to the park, and she comes back, and first thing he says is, "On the day you were born."
Yes. I love it. I think it's so funny.
So I'm trying to think, on the day we met.
Or you could do on the day I was born. We can get as creative as we want to be.
Oh my gosh, I'm really being put on the spot.
So I'll start because I've had more time to think about it. So that's only fair. But so Maddie, on the day you were born, I just remember you being in the littlest incubator that the hospital had. I remember the nurse, she had to call it in because all of the other incubators you would have just drowned in because they were so big. You were so cute and little. And I remember going up to you in the little tiny incubator and saying, "Maddie, one day I want you to be my friend." And then you looked up and you smiled at me. And then that's how we first met.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I was like waiting for you to bust out like the voice, like on the day you were born.
No, that's your voice. That's your claim to fame.
You know what's so funny too? My sister said that her husband was like, "Was Henry really in an incubator?"
He like really believed the story.
He really did. And he said, he's like, was he really premature?
Yeah.
Okay, so Shay, on the day you were born, you weren't premature, but you were so little and so tiny. And do you know what's crazy? Aren't you sitting there thinking like, I was never tiny? Like, because that's when you said you were so little. I'm like, nobody ever called me little.
Oh, yeah. I've always been a bigger kid, but this is your story. So I'm going with it.
Yeah. So you were so little and so tiny, but you weren't in an incubator and you weren't on life support. And they said, you're going to meet Maddie. You guys are going to get to hang out and be friends, and that you'll one day get to meet Chad and Winifred in real life.
And did I just start squealing? Because that's what I would love to meet you guys in real life.
Yes, and we can cook in person together.
There you go. I love it.
I'm really terrible at being put on the spot.
No, I thought that was a great one. I had more time to think about it, in all fairness. I had to include the incubator in there because every time you say that, it makes me crack up.
Oh my gosh. And my sister's like, you can't forget they were almost orphans.
I know, yeah. And they had to walk uphill to the snow to try to find you.
Oh my gosh, I know. We talk to them like they're our babies.
Well, so we have 2 corgis and they're like our children. So we have Ted, he's a Pembroke Welsh corgi, and he was born with only one eye. This is real story. It sounds like I'm making this up. Right. But he was born with only one eye, and he's our little baby. So like when the way you talk to Winifred, that's how we are with Ted. Like he's our baby. And then we got Lydia, who's a little rescue. She was 4 years old. So she was like a retired mama. And so she's living her best life in retirement with us now with no babies around, and she's loving life.
I would get like 5 more of those dogs.
Oh, I know.
Like,
no,
I think that might just be my destiny.
Literally, me and Dylan yesterday were talking about like one day we'd love to have some property, but not to like have farm animals. We just want like a herd of corgis, like just corgis everywhere. I'm like, why don't more people do that? The Queen did it. But and he's like, well, they don't really like add value to like the farm. And I was like, you're telling me that Ted does not add value? And he's like, no. It's so funny though. But I'm like,
do you follow Dr. Joe?
I don't know if I follow him.
And Marty, the office corgi?
I don't think so. How do I not know them?
So Dr. Joe is, I always call him my surgeon now because I don't have a surgeon. He's a bariatric surgeon in Texas.
Oh yes. I think I've seen you post stuff about him. I think I maybe do follow him. And
he has Marty, the office corgi. And Marty's so cute. I got to meet him he wasn't at the last retreat, but he was at the one before that. And oh my gosh, he's precious. Yeah, he's a little corgi. They said he gained some weight over quarantine. But he goes to the office on Tuesdays and Fridays and like sees patients with Dr. Joe.
Oh my gosh. So thinking about your whole journey and everything, if you can picture yourself, we were talking about little Maddie in an incubator, but if you could picture yourself actually as like a little girl, and what would be the one thing, like you're cupping her face and you're looking at her, what would be the one thing you would say to her?
That no matter what you struggle with in the upcoming like next years of your life, that everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that no matter what you go through in your life, and I know that I'll have challenges that come up in the future, but I'll always be okay. And I think that I need to know that like I'm strong enough to make it through anything that comes my way.
Yeah. And you are.
I think for the first time in my life over the past couple years, I'm just realizing that I will always be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that I ever would have had that realization if I wouldn't have had bariatric surgery, because it has literally changed so many aspects of my life.
Yeah.
Like it was the first step to self-love. It was the first step to just like changing my whole life. But it is like the first thing that kind of catapulted my life into changing.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. I agree with that. Thank you guys for watching. Go check out Maddie's Instagram, TikTok, blog. She is just such an encouraging and uplifting person. If you've been thinking about bariatric surgery, if you've gotten it, if you haven't gotten bariatric surgery, I recommend going and checking her platforms out. I just want to say a big thank you to Maddie for doing this video with me. I appreciate your light and all that you offer to your community, and I can't wait to get to know you more.